Hello everyone and welcome to SplitSecond. This week David went back on Bruvac, who received some goodies lately. Hélder is on a patron's request for Tiamat, which he built it around Food Chain. Leite loved them Storm builds and went for Yidris. And Baal wanted to try out the so acclaimed Rog Silas combination, Deak's decklist. Before we see the starting hands, we will now show you the details of our giveaway. We have 2 prizes for 2 lucky patrons, to be drafted in the beginning of September, so you have 1 month to be eligible to enter, by becoming a patron of any tier or for a juicier prize, a stack breaker. Our first prize will be randomly given to one of our stack breakers, and includes a foil promo pack from Kaldheim and D&D sets, as well as a normal pack from D&D and 3 Pretty Buy a Box promos. After the first prize is raffled, we have a second one, to be drafted between any patron of any tier, and it includes a foil promo pack of Kaldheim and 2 regular promo packs from D&D, as well as these promos. These prizes were graciously sponsored by our LGS Arena Porto. David is going first and he mulliganed once, founding 2 islands and an ancient tomb, but a mana crypt actually allows him for a turn 1 Bruvac. Eden has Tasha's Hideous Laughter, which does not mill, therefore it's not doubled by Bruvac, but its sheer potential is enough to have included in his deck. Intuition for some winning lines and dig through time for card selection mid-game. Hélder had to mulligan down to 6, finding a Flooded Strand and a Breeding Pool for lands, with plenty of darks, Avacyn's Pilgrim, Elvish Mystic and Ignoble Hierarch. After all that, he has Wishclaw Talisman to try to find something according to the board state. He sent the forest to the bottom. Leite kept his first hand and water hand, a single tropical island but with a Talisman of Dominance, Deathrite Shaman and Simian Spirit Guide for ramp, allowing him to cast Windfall turn 2. He still has Gitaxian Probe for extra card draw and counterbalance if he plans to grind out the match. Lastly, Baal also mulliganed down to 6, finding a Badlands and a Spire of Industry as lands, with a Lotus Petal and Talisman of Dominance for ramp, alongside Brainstorm for card draw, missing on shuffle effects, and the Demonic Consultation, missing the so infamous Thassa's Oracle. He sent to the bottom Baal's Citadel. Ready for this match? David starts his turn with an island, followed by a mana crypt, allowing him for an uncontested Bruvac turn 1. He passes and Hélder plays a Flooded Strand and cracks it for a Savannah, and then casts Ignoble Hierarch before passing to Leite. He starts his turn with a Gitaxian Probe targeting David, to check for any free counter magic. Tasha's Hideous Laughter scared him quite a lot, so he plays a Tropical Island and simply exiles a Simian Spirit Guide to cast a Mana Vault and pass, holding on to a top-decked Flusterstorm. Baal plays a Badlands and casts Rograkh right away. He then casts a Lotus Petal and cracks it to cast Talisman of Dominance before passing. David gets to his turn and wins the Crypt Roll. He plays an island and goes for a Ponder, as he fears Leite's open mana. He draws and casts Baal, which resolves, and he attacks Leite with Bruvac before passing. Hélder plays an untapped Breeding Pool and casts Avacyn's Pilgrim. He follows that with an Elvish Mystic and passes, almost capable of casting his commander. Leite gets to his turn and casts a Talisman of Dominance as well. He follows it with a Dark Ritual and everyone's expecting an Ad Nauseam. Baal ponders on reacting, but Leite does tell him he's not going for nows, and he should be more worried about David's hand. It resolves, so he casts a Deathrite Shaman and follows it with his Windfall, stripping David half of his Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Baal responds by casting Brainstorm, hoping to save some of his cards on top. David passes and Hélder also casts his Brainstorm, doing exactly the same, saving some cards on top. Everyone discards and draws 6 new cards, notably Hélder discards a Sevin's Reclamation. Leite then plays a Verdant Catacombs and cracks it for a Badlands and passes. Baal draws 7 and no lands to be found, so he casts an Arcane Signet and follows it with a Faithless Looting, digging even deeper. He discards 2 and then plays a Mana Confluence before passing. David now loses his Crit Roll and plays an Urza Saga. He follows it with a Cursed Totem, and Hélder is set way behind. He passes and Hélder simply plays a City of Brass and goes to combat, sending his Exalted Elf towards Baal before passing. Leite takes 1 from the vault and also goes to combat, sending the Deathrite at Baal before passing as well. Baal gets to his turn and casts Silas right away, hoping to deter more attacks. He passes and David manages to win his Crit Roll. He draws an Urza Saga's trigger, adding another ability to itself. He plays an island and passes fully untapped. Hélder plays an Undergrowth Stadium and goes again to combat, sending the Exalted Elf again at Baal, which doesn't block. It's Leite's turn and he takes 1 from the vault. He casts Dockside Extortionist, entering and giving him 6 treasures, with which he casts his commander Yidris, Maelstrom Wielder, before passing. Baal draws and casts a Mox Ember. He then goes to combat, paying back Hélder's favor. Silas triggers and he targets his Aether Spell Bomb, which he casts, to have Bruvac and Yidris in check, hopefully. He then casts a Diabolical Intent, sacrificing his Rograkh. Hélder mentions his wishes to cast an opposition agent. but Baal remembers he has the spell bomb ready, and he really needs the tutor so the agent wouldn't stick, and he loses the mana to have it ready before Urza Saga's trigger. Hélder takes the finger off the trigger and Baal tutors for a Dockside Extortionist, which he still casts, hoping to get some mana and maybe take out some treasures from Leite, in case Leite wants to deny Baal off of some more mana. No one responds and Baal gets 8 treasures. He passes and in his end step, David activates Urza Saga to create a construct. David manages to win his crit roll again, he draws an Urza Saga's trigger. He adds mana with it in response to the trigger and then Hélder responds to it, firing his opposition agent. David does some math and does fire a Pact of Negation. Hélder ponders for a second but lets the pact resolve. David decides not to loot with Baal and now he tutors for a Grindstone. Suddenly he is setting up for a Panther Servant and Grindstone combo. He plays an island and unfortunately the spellbomb is messing with his plans, so he fires a Cyclonic Rift onto it preemptively. Baal responds and cracks it to send Yidris to Leite's hand. He follows that with a Weird of Invention for 2, which spells Painter Servant all over, so Hélder fires his Dispel now. With his plans foiled, David uses the floating mana from the saga and activates Grindstone targeting Leite, and with Bruvac he mills 4 instead, which could improve the odds, but sadly 3 lands are milled, so he passes. Hélder plays an Exotic Orchard and starts things with a Dark Ritual. He then follows it with a Necropotence, which resolves. He then casts Wishclaw Talisman and goes to combat, sending his good old Exalted Elf at Baal. On his second main phase he pays 7 life to Necro and goes to his end step, refilling his hand. Leite gets to his turn and casts Yidris again before passing the turn. Baal draws and jumps to combat, sending Silas at Hélder, who actually blocks with one of his vanilla 1/1s. Baal then recasts his Rograkh and passes. David pays for his Pact of Negation and loses his crit roll. He draws and simply passes with 2 cards in hand, hoping to eventually recoup. Hélder doesn't draw and casts a Gamble for his Queen. He randomly discards a Birds of Paradise, which is exiled due to Necro. He then casts his own Dockside Extortionist, which could mean victory just now. So as everyone else passes, David fires a Delay, countering it, and again not wanting to loot with Baal. Hélder then plays a Command Tower and activates Necro for 10 life, and goes to end step to put them into his hand. He discards 2 hand size, exiling them and passing his turn. Leite takes 1 from the vault, plays a Morphic Pool and jumps to combat, sending Yidris at Hélder. In response, Hélder fires a Snap onto Yidris, to which Leite then responds with a Red Elemental Blast. Baal is in favor of Yidris not connecting, so he responds with a Swan Song on the blast. However, Leite still responds with a Veil of Summer, so in response Baal fires a Demonic Consultation, which actually resolves, so he names Ad Nauseam. He survives the first 6 and goes quite deep into finding that Nauseam, losing access to LED and Brain Freeze, among other good things. Still in response to the Veil, he fires the Ad Nauseam, however Leite responds to it with a Pact of Negation. So now, still in response to the Veil, Hélder fires a Swan Song onto the Veil. In response, Leite casts a Chain of Vapor on his Dockside Extortionist and then copies it, targeting his own Mana Vault. He floats 1 blue with the Talisman and copies the Chain, targeting it. He then copies it again, targeting the Cursed Totem this time. He then uses Deathrite to exile a land from Baal, for a black, to cast a Cabal Ritual, and then he hardcasts Force of Will on the Swan Song. However, Hélder still has protection, as he has been drawing plenty with the Necro, so he casts his own Force of Will, pitching a Ponder. At this moment we realize that Leite won't even have the mana to cast his stuff in his second main phase, as we are still mid-combat. His habits of spell-slinging stuff with Birgi didn't pay off this time around. He accepts his demise to lose to his pact in the next upkeep, and passes. However, in the end step, Hélder probes Baal's library size, 18, so he fires a Brain Freeze, and 7 copies at Baal in case he would have something to counter some, and the other 5 copies he sends his way, as he already has Savins in the graveyard. Baal goes to his turn and once again loses as he attempts to draw from an empty library. He's getting used to it. David loses his crit and starts his turn with Immersion Scroll, causing a sweat on Hélder. David goes through his deck several times as Necropotence actually saves Hélder from losing to something like a Traumatize. This way he goes for a Fabricate, which he also casts, to find Soul Guide Lantern, which he proceeds to cast. When it enters, he exiles Savin's Reclamation. He then goes into combat since it might be his best way to deal with Hélder now, as he claimed his Milling Crown last turn. The irony. David passes without casting the totem as he's holding some interaction. Hélder skips his draw step and instantly activates his Wishclaw Talisman, giving him to Leite, who won't have much use for it. He tutors for a Flusterstorm. He then casts Squee and follows it with his Food Chain. David responds with a Mana Drain. However, Hélder is ready with his Flusterstorm, sealing the game. He demonstrates a loop where he exiles Squee to Food Chain and casts it from exile, netting infinite red mana. From there, he can generate infinite mana of any other color to cast creature spells. He then casts Tiamat, entering the battlefield and triggering to find Terror of the Peaks, which he casts, and from there he can repeat the loop to cast Squee from exile, pinging any target when it enters with his Terror of the Peaks. GG. Thank you for joining us for today's match, everyone. Combo deck mills out Turbo deck, milling deck mills no one, and storming deck stormed way too much, forgetting to stop. We'd like to start the credits by thanking our current patrons, and especially Izanagi, Stefan, TJ Rapp, Mike Purr, Ajimo, Uncrustable, Drunken Housecat, V, RJ, Heated Shield, Pina, and Kidu Sucks, our stack breakers. If you want to support us, you can do so by liking this video, subscribing, or by becoming a patron yourself. If you want to go through other Commander adventures, click one of the videos on the right. If you want to talk with us about our games or other EDH related matters, join us on Discord. Join us again next week for a new set of Commanders and more decisive plays. See you all then!